Very glad actually to see you all today here. So let me share my screen and let's start. So before we start, actually, I just want to say that this presentation, like me and Diana, we prepared it in totally another reality. So we have started in like about New Year. And back then, like we hadn't war in Ukraine, and since that time, like life of all Ukrainians really changed a lot. So now we are doing the things we are not supposed to do. We're like making bulletproof vests. We are accepting refugees from all of the countries. We are building fortifications together. And I would like to use this opportunity and my right of speech today to request your financial support. Here is the QR code that you can scan right now and donate to our close friend Volodymyr. That it's, as Diana mentioned in the beginning, that he's donating like money and finances for our united forces. So I will give you some time to scan this QR code, or you can later find it in the event where you have like made a subscription. Okay. So let's move on. I think the war isn't the reason why you're here, and I believe you're here to listen my story and my experience of Webhooks design and development. So let's start a bit about who I am. My name is Andrew. I am 19 years old. I am very active person. Last year, I actually had my first half marathon. Right now, I'm preparing for a triathlon. I've been doing riding a bike for a very long time. Started swimming, so I think I'm in good shape to give it a try. And also, I'm doing my YouTube channel. It's mostly about Ruby, and it's in Russian, but you can check it out, and you will actually find this presentation there as well. And the one last thing is that this is my first public event, and I'm not native speaker, so sorry for any errors in the speaking I can make in the future, but I will do my best. So I work for Credit Ninja. We are credit like lending company, and the piece that I am doing is about payments. And I have done a lot of integrations with different payment processors and bank verification vendors. And like that's why I have a lot of experience with webhooks as well. So before we go forward, I want to better feel my audience. And could you please write the Doom chat, like what is your level? Are you junior, middle, senior? Just how do you feel about yourself? Junior, middle, senior? Please write in chat. Okay. Okay, nice. Okay. And have you ever used or built a webhooks in your life? Yes or no? No, yes. Okay. Okay. It's about...
Just 1 second, please. I need to interrupt you because I see that a lot of people, they write their answers just to us, like to me and to you. Please, guys, choose. You will see you have this option to whom you will write. Please choose to everyone, so everyone will see your comments in the chat. But because now I see just like a lot of people write just to me and Andriy.
Okay, so I think that about all of you are media and senior level, and like some of you have dealt with webhooks, some not. So I will like go through a bit what is polling and what is webhooks, so that you better understand, so that we all are on the same page. So our agenda for today is first of all, we will like talk about what it's polling, what it's webhooks, about the simplest implementation ever you can make to build your own webhook system. And then on top of that, we would put different layers of improvements, like subscriptions API. We will talk about different types of sending, inline and background. We'll talk about retries, how we in company do retries, about security, how we handle duplicates, and then we would have a short sum up. As Diana said, if you have any questions, please write it down or put into the Zoom chat, and I will give an answers to them at the end of the conference. Okay, so we have two ways of synchronization: server and the client, polling and webhooks. Polling is a simple way. Webhook is the right one. So to understand what the polling is, let's use the following example. Let's imagine that you are the client or the child, and you are waiting when your father or server finishes its job. In our case, it's preparing cookies. And you are constantly making requests to your father whether the cookies are done. Like, are cookies done? Father answers, no, I'm doing dough. Are cookies done? No, I'm like baking them. So in the computer world, it looks like the client is making API requests to the server to fetch the latest status, right? And webhooks is kind of opposite. It's when server says, stop bothering me with your questions, and I will notify you when I'm done. So again, in computer world, it means that constant polling loads server resources very much, and webhook is given advantage to us to take away load from the server and reduce number of API calls that we are making. And webhooks are actually pretty easy to integrate. They don't load the server, but they have one main disadvantage: they are hard to be built. So the sum up that I want you to understand is that webhooks is nice and clean way, and polling is quick and dirty way to synchronization between the server and the client. I actually had a discussion recently with one junior developer about how it's hard to build and design the webhooks. And his main point was that this is easy. Why just don't you do this? I have asked him for a snippet of code, and here's what he sent me. So we are doing some actions here on the snippet, like making payments, sending a receipt, and then we are sending a webhook when we are done to the specified URL. I have said that it's pretty good solution, but let's think what could be improved here. So first of all, this solution isn't reliable, right? Because in any point of time, you can catch a timeout, right? And then whole requests of placing order will fail, right? And that's bad because customer will see an error. The second one, it's not flexible. We can't change the target URL. We can change the body. And that's also said. It's not secure. We'll talk later why. And it's not fast in terms of execution time because we are waiting for API requests to be processed in line, right? And API requests in modern world typically have timeout of 30 seconds, and your client can wait 30 seconds or even more to place the order on the website. That's like horrible. And the last one is it's not user-friendly for the company that you are integrating with. So they can't manage their target URL where they want to receive a webhook. So like, I mean, if they change their URL, if they change the server address, then they have to ping you to do the change in your code. But we can fix all those issues in 5 simple steps, and further we will talk how. The first one is subscription. In modern world, client doesn't have one URL. Typically, they have multiple development environments, right? We have in Great Ninja preview environment, we have staging environment, we have local development environment, production environment, and each of those have its own separate URL, right? Where we want to receive a webhook. And what is subscription? Subscription is an API for a client where they can say, we want webhook on this URL. Like such request is called a subscription. So typically, it's a post request to endpoint. You just send the URL where you want to receive the subscriptions. We have API to get list of all subscriptions, cancels your subscription, and get list of events that you can subscribe to. And very weird that 99% of the companies don't have it. And to be honest, I don't understand why not. It takes about 2 days of development, and it's very simple to do. But a lot of people just don't have it. And like, just show me your webhook documentation, and I will tell how cool your product is. And here's a real-world example for you. If you compare Stripe and 2Checkout, which is 2 payment processor vendors, we will see that Stripe has a webhook subscription API, right? And 2Checkout, in 2Checkout, you have to set up webhook in the customer portal. And like, they have only one URL you can specify for your webhooks. And by this, you can clearly see how each company treats its client. Again, it's very common error, and it's the most valuable improvement you can make. And by the way, the endpoints I showed you on the previous slide was stolen from Stripe. So yeah, Stripe is good. So sending. What you see on the left side is called inline sending, and this is a piece of the code that my junior friend sent to me. If we would think what's wrong with inline sending, again, it has 2 main problems: long execution time, because we wait for API requests to be finished, and API errors that happen from time to time. And on the right side, there is a background sending, which happens when we move sending of the webhook to background job. So instead of doing this HTTP party post, we schedule a background job that will send a webhook later. We are not doing it like in line while the client is waiting for our server to give an answer for his request. And by doing this, we get the following advantages. So first of all, the sending errors affect only the job. What I mean, if we have, again, HTTP error, we would see that the job failed, okay, but it's not critical for us because we can retry it later. We don't wait for API calls to be finished because we do it in the background. And as a bonus, we have job retries. And we would talk about job retries on the next slides. And while I was preparing this presentation, I did a research on webhook as a service companies. Webhooks as a service companies handle this complexity that we are talking about today by themselves. And what their suggestion, it's very funny that they are suggesting inline handling in their app samples. Like they want you to send API requests to their service, and then they will send webhooks to your clients. But in such case, you're getting the same issues that I have talked before with sending, with time of API requests, and so on. It may work for you if you trust their uptime, but if you don't, then it won't. Okay, so let's talk about job retries. So job retries are helping us to handle the situation when client API endpoint is temporarily down, right? So here is example of what we do in production for such case. We send a webhook to the client. Request fails. We catch an error and schedule one more job later. And with each retry, we increase the gap between attempts exponentially. So you can see the formula on the slide. And this code snippet is from our production application. And it's wonderful that this approach is very simple and has been working really good even for the large scales. So I think if we would be honest, experienced dev can see right away that it's not perfect because sometimes if you have really large amount of background jobs, queue overflow can happen, right? When you miss the jobs that were scheduled and they are skipped. But for such cases, you can do like webhook delivery monitoring. You can write statuses to database, like whether the webhook is sent or not. So it could be handled easily. Okay, so step 4. Step 4 is security, and that's my beloved one. So let's imagine that we have a marketplace like Amazon, where merchants can place their goods, right? And when order is placed, marketplace sends a webhook to notify the merchant about new order. And then attackers start to spam in merchant with a fake webhooks, aka new orders. And at the results, what happens is that merchant starting to send in his orders to fake addresses, right? Which could be lost orders for the merchant business. So why this happens? Because again, very often companies doesn't have standard verification for their webhook system. There are different type of verifications of sender, right? You can simply whitelist IP addresses, but that's actually a bad solution because like again, companies usually have different servers, and we rarely have one or like fixed number of IP addresses. As an opposite of that, there is a key signature verification, right? So the following approach is used. Server and the client have the same keys. Before sending a webhook, server takes the body of the webhook and his key. Then he generates a signature, typically with HMAC protocol. And then the signature is being inserted into the headers, and then request is sent to the client. And before processing, before any actions, before processing of the request, client generates signature using body of the request and his version of the key, and then checks if it matches to signature provided in headers. Then it starts processing of the webhooks. In such case, if we would have an attacker here, he wouldn't know the key of the server, and signature verification just wouldn't pass. And if you think that like this scenario is unreal, Slack has recently was attacked using the same approach. So Slack has API where you can send a webhook, and bot will post a message into the channel. Right? If you use Slack, I think you have used such features. And their API doesn't have verification of the sender, right? Because you can see that send the message client hits randomly generated URL they are providing. And that's usually considered technically secure, because if your URL is generated randomly and it's not guessable, then like attacker wouldn't know your URL, right? So they haven't done sender verification because of those purposes. But then what happened is that people started leaving those URLs in their GitHub repos without any thoughts that they would be hacked. And do you know how much people exposed it? About 130,000 exposed URLs were found in GitHub and other systems. And this, I think this wasn't people mistake. This was design that helped them to make a mistake. And this situation reminds me a teapot on the cover of Don Norman's book. Yeah, because again, it's their mistake in their design. We all know that API token has to be stored in secure place, right? And when you are storing your key that you are making signature with, you are doing everything to protect it. But as a developer, we usually remember that URL isn't that important in most of the cases, and URL can be just hard-coded. And that played a very bad joke. And by the way, Slack hasn't changed the design of the API. They invalidated the exposed URL they were able to find. So what I want to recommend you is don't reinvent the wheel. Use a very old but very reliable technique with signature verification, and everything will be good. Okay, so now duplications. Duplications, it's very common situation that happens all the time. So here is an example. Marketplace won't notify the merchant about new order, right? It makes the request, merchant started processing of this request, but it's taken more than 30 seconds. Of course, marketplace is waiting 30 seconds to request to be completed, but no answer, and like we drop the connection, supposing that the merchant has frozen. And after some time, merchant eventually finishes the processing, right? But server thinks that request timed out, and server does a retry. And as a result, in this case, customer would receive 2 orders instead of 1. Personally, I would be very happy if I would receive 2 iPhones instead of 1, but I think it's not good for merchant. And how we can help merchant to prevent double processing. So by providing webhook ID or delivery ID. So all requests, including retries, should have the same ID, right? And by doing so, we give availability for the client to check if he already processed such request. He just looks up for this delivery ID in his database or in his Redis, and if he hasn't done this processing of this webhook yet, then he will process the request. If not, then he will skip it. So let's do a quick sum up. Now you should understand what the polling is, what the webhook is, how to do a minimal implementation, and how to do subscription API, why it's important to have a background setting, how to do job retries, how to handle security cases, and how to make duplicate protection for your clients. So yeah, that's about it. I think we are early on time, but we would have more time for your questions if you have them.
So guys, now you can write in a chat your questions, and also if you want to speak with Andriy, you can push raise hand button and I will unmute you.
So meanwhile, I will answer questions from chat one by one. So client Laskowski asks what was my half marathon time. It was very terrible. I think it was 2 hours and 30 minutes or maybe less. Just because it's very hard to me to run because I have problems with heart. But this half marathon, it should be 2 hours and less. At least I hope so.
Dmitro said that presentation is awesome. Thank you. Okay, so if we don't have questions, so maybe the reason is that you explained so well that you guys understood everything from your presentation. You can ask how we are doing. I don't know. What is the weather today?
Remember that we have 2 presents.
Yeah.
If you will ask any questions, you will be in top of 2.
But
anyway.
Not about half marathon, but about Ruby, guys, please. We're still waiting. Okay, no, seems like no questions. Oh yeah, something. something we have.
Ruby native hooks, no, not that one.
Thank you, Dima, again. Okay, so if we don't have questions, and it's okay, it happens sometimes. So yes, as I said before, that's maybe why that you explained very nice, but good topic. I still have to implement duplication in my app. Denise, roll to you. Thanks for the talk. Thank you for being with us today. So maybe you want to advise something for Denise. Andrew.
I think duplication, Denise meant duplication, but yeah, just try to add a unique ID for the request, and you should be really good. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you all for being with us today. Thank you for, oh, okay, we have questions.
Is there any potential case when you would prefer polling over webhooks? Actually, really nice question. So the polling, I would use polling if I have right local environment, because it's hard to specify the URL for your local environment because it's closed typically. So in this case, I would prefer polling. Or if I have startup. If I have startup, then I would again choose polling because it's just faster and cheaper to implement. And then I would refactor it later. What does isDeliver method checks in your use case in general terms? So isDelivered is a method that checks the state of active record instance. So for tracking of the webhooks, we use database, and before we schedule the job, we create record that we have this webhook scheduled for delivering, and then we have like check if it's delivered or not. That's about generally. One additional thing, is it good to delete webhook if you receive 410 GAN or 404? Delete a webhook, you mean disable this API endpoint that you are sending it to entirely, or what do you mean, Denise? Yes, because it doesn't make any sense to send request to that endpoint anymore. You know, I would still try to send the request to that endpoint just with increasing interval, right? Because like maybe guys have made some changes on their engine's configuration, and like all requests are showing 404, and they are working on the fix. You never know. So it's just better if you don't receive 200, do a retry later. Just incrementally increase your time of the retry. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to disable the webhooks for some cases. But personally, I see more inconvenience to your client, because I think that there is a chance that the request may succeed in future, because they would release a fix for this. So I wouldn't agree with Trey IO in this scenario. Main question is here: when do you start your stuff with Rightway Webhooks SaaS, Webhooks subscription as a service? Webhooks subscription as a service is, I think it's potentially, it may be a very good solution, but for the startup, I'm not sure if they have like this advanced pricing. But yeah, maybe for the startup, actually they're pretty good solution, because you have security from the early start, and you don't invest in the development very much. So yeah, I would use if I have money, right? I don't think it's too expensive. Hi, I think I get later in the call, but I want to ask you, what do you do think is best security method for webhooks? So I think the best security, if you're afraid that Russian hackers will try to hack you, and you want to do like everything to make your webhook endpoint secure, is to have both IP whitelisting and the signature verification. If you have both of them, the chances that you will get attacked are like really nearly zero. But again, it depends. If you feel that IP whitelisting would be a problem for your clients, then don't do it. Just do signature verification. Yeah, and also I remember that I have seen some Ruby gem that are like trying to implement webhooks templates or something like that. Like with them, you can try to set up webhooks pretty easily. I haven't used them. I've just seen. So yeah, if you have startup, why not? You can try.